and this should not be an either-or choice.
Samantha Liblet, short question.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Trans people don't wake up at 18 suddenly trans, it starts before then. And when we talk about protecting children, this means protecting trans children so they can transition into adulthood knowing they had parents and doctors that were advocating for their needs. But this is not a prison sentence either, so I wonder if the Secretary of State can talk about the trial and if people change their mind, whether they are entitled to withdraw from said trial.
They certainly can, Madam Deputy Speaker, and if they withdraw, they still get the wider therapeutic support that they deserve.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're talking here about physically healthy primary school-aged children being injected with drugs to stop them growing up. There is nothing medically wrong with these children. What these children need is love, support and compassion to help them accept their healthy bodies. They are perfect just the way they are. The Health Secretary says he's uncomfortable with this experiment and his instincts are correct. In the haunting words of Keira Bell, a courageous young woman, a victim of the Tavistock scandal, I was an unhappy girl who needed help. Instead, I was treated like an experiment. And when these children, who are now going to be experimented on, become adults, they will want to know who did this to me. But this time, the truth will be this was state-sanctioned. Out in the open, I'm afraid to say that the Health Secretary's say-so. So I am begging the Health Secretary, will he use his power as the politician in charge to do what he must know is right and stop this?
State.
Can I say to my honourable friend, I wish I had certainty on this issue, and in some ways I envy him for his certainty. And can also say to my honourable friend, having occasionally found myself a lonely voice when sat on those benches in my party, I respect the fact that it is not easy to be in a minority dissenting voice, especially when one feels so strongly about it. So I respect his position, even though I disagree with it. I do think this is the right thing to do. He is right that we need love and compassion and empathy for these young people. We also need to understand what health and care support will produce the best outcomes for these young people, and that's what this trial is about.
Arthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I do thank the Secretary of State for his leadership on this issue. I think nobody envies him in the decisions he has to make, but he is making the right decision on this issue. During my election campaign, I met a fantastic mother, and I think no mother could have loved their daughter more. And she told me about how when her daughter entered puberty, she had to come to terms with her own biological sex and the impact that had on her mental health. So to delay puberty, she stopped eating. She ended up in hospital, arrived in hospital in an ambulance so weak that she had to be treated in the ambulance. So I welcome that this trial will look at some of the side effects of puberty blockers, but alongside that we'll also consider the impact of not taking puberty blockers in some cases. And can you also update us on how we will be kept up to date on this trial as it progresses?
I can certainly promise my honourable friend we will keep the House regularly updated. I must also say to him, it is those risks that he's described that have weighed heavily on my conscience when putting in place a permanent ban on puberty blockers. And I've understood the risk involved and the vulnerability of this particular group of children and young people. I also meant to say, in response to my honourable friend who asked the question previously, I would say that the parents of trans young people love their children very much, and that has been at the heart of so many of the representations that I've received from parents as well as young people.
Final question, Josh Newbury.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At its publication, the party opposite welcomed the Cast Review, including the clear recommendation for this trial. 8 years ago, the then leader of the Conservative Party supported self-ID and declared trans women are women. Now we have dog whistle statements like, if we leave these children alone, many will get over it, which the Shadow Minister said just yesterday in Westminster Hall. Would the Secretary of State agree with me that a rigorous clinical trial is the only way that we will get the impartial evidence that he needs to make informed decisions on gender-affirming care for trans young people.
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend that we need a strong evidence base, that we need to conduct these conversations with great care, consideration and compassion, that we need to recognise the vulnerability of this particular group of children and young people and the fear that so many trans people in our country feel about whether this is a country that accepts and respects them. The political climate has changed since we made all the progress we've made on LGBT equality over the last 20 and 30 years. But do I think the character of this country has changed? Do I think we are less inclusive, less respectful, less loving or less caring? Absolutely not. Those are the hallmarks of this country and the British people. We might be having a debate about the efficacy of this trial, but I think the overwhelming majority of people in this House do so in that spirit of wanting trans people to live healthy, happy lives where they feel safe, included and respected in our country.
That is the end of the urgent question. I'll give the front benches a few moments to shuffle over as we prepare for the first statement. Statement on UK-EU Common Understanding negotiations, and I call the Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And with permission, I'd like to make a statement on the Government's strategic partnership with the EU. The Government was elected with a manifesto commitment to reset relations with our European partners, to tear down unnecessary barriers to trade and to cut costs and red tape for British producers and retailers, to increase national security through strong borders and greater cooperation with our closest allies, and indeed to support jobs here in the UK and opportunities abroad. And in May this year, this Government agreed a new strategic partnership with the EU that the Prime Minister announced at the historic UK-EU summit, the first of its kind. It's a landmark deal that is good for bills, good for our borders and good for jobs. And we took this decision, exercising our sovereignty, to strike a deal in the national interest. We had to fix a bad deal passed on to us by the previous government, the first trade deal in history that made it harder to trade. And just as we have done with the US and India, this Labour government is striking deals to bring down bills for British people and open new opportunities for British businesses. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, since the summit, I've led negotiations with the European Commission to implement the commitments we made. So I'm therefore pleased to inform the House that earlier today, the UK and the European Commission concluded negotiations for the UK's association to Erasmus Plus from 2027. And it will open up world-class opportunities for students, teachers, youth workers, sports sector professionals and communities of all ages in our education, training, sport and youth sectors, both for the professionals that work in those sectors and, crucially, for our young people too. And for students, this means more chances to study, to train, to work, to volunteer abroad, gaining language skills and experience that makes them attractive to employers. For our teachers, youth workers and those who work in the sports sector, it means greater opportunities for professional development. And for our schools, colleges, universities and providers, it means access to networks and partnerships that will drive quality, encourage research links and enhance the reputation of the UK's world-leading education system. And indeed, I was meeting with students at the New City College in Hackney this morning, Madam Deputy Speaker, to see the range of benefits they're going to be, including also playing basketball. Now, as part of Erasmus Plus, participants can travel to any European Union member state and indeed several countries outside the European Union as well. It will go further than schemes that have come before it, offering a broader scope of activity and a specific focus on unlocking opportunities for all. This is an investment in opportunity for young people from all backgrounds, our workforce and our future, and it will open doors for tens of thousands more young people across the UK, renewing our ties with Europe and beyond. This Labour government has always been clear that we want young people, no matter what their background or where they live in this country, to have access to the best opportunities in life. It's what we consistently delivered, and it's what we are delivering with this announcement today. And we're pleased that the EU has agreed financial terms that represent a fair balance between the UK's contribution and the benefits this programme offers. The 30% discount in 2027 compared to the default terms in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement is what has paved the way for UK participation in the programme. And we have also agreed, Madam Deputy Speaker, there will be a review of the UK's participation in the programme 10 months after our association, so we can look at the actual data concerning the demand for funding in the UK. And going forward, any continued participation in Erasmus Plus under the next multi-annual financial framework will be informed by that data and our experience of association in 2027. We've always said, Madam Deputy Speaker, we won't sign deals unless they're in the national interest, and in this case I'm happy to say the agreement passed that test. The Government will now work to maximise take-up across all sectors so the benefits of Erasmus Plus association can be fully realised. We'll work closely with institutions and our young people to support this, particularly amongst disadvantaged groups. And a UK national agency will be appointed to administer the programme in due course. In addition, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to inform the House that the UK and the European Commission have also concluded exploratory talks on the UK's participation in the EU's internal electricity market. And the details of this will be set out in an exchange of letters that will be published next week between Commissioner Maros Šefčovič and myself. Closer cooperation on electricity will bring real benefits to businesses and consumers across Europe. It will drive down energy costs and protect consumers against volatile fossil fuel markets. It will drive up investment in the North Sea and strengthen energy security. The UK and the EU will now proceed swiftly with negotiations on a UK-EU electricity agreement. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, that is not all. I welcome the clarification from the European Commission today that in practice there should be no carbon border adjustment mechanism costs levied on UK electricity exports, a welcome development that reflects our extensive use of renewables. Negotiations to link our carbon markets are also underway. This will cut costs, it will make it cheaper for UK companies to move to greener energy, and once agreed, it will save UK goods exports from EU CBAM charges on £7 billion worth of UK exports. Negotiations on the food and drink agreement are also underway, which will enable food and agricultural businesses to trade more cheaply and easily by slashing red tape and costly paperwork introduced by the last government, whether it's the £200 businesses currently face for export health certificates on every single shipment, or small businesses choosing not to trade with the EU altogether. And the new agreement that we have will put this right, boosting our exports, cutting costs for importers and bringing down prices on supermarket shelves. The UK and the EU are committed to implementing the commitments of the May 2025 summit in a timely manner. We are working swiftly to conclude negotiations on that food and drink deal and linking our carbon markets, I can tell the House, by the time of the next UK-EU summit in 2026. So across all these areas, the UK is clear, of course, there will be no return to the single market, customs union or freedom of movement. We will agree deals that are in our national interest. This government is exercising our sovereignty to deliver for the British people. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are committed to building this new strategic partnership with the European Union. Indeed, I spoke with my counterpart in the Commission, Maros Šefčovič, last week, where we underlined our shared commitment to implementing the common understanding the Prime Minister and the Commission President agreed at the UK-EU summit in May. Whether it is through boosting opportunities for young people and educators across the country, or cutting energy bills, or a food and drink deal that slashes red tape and cuts costs, I will always negotiate in the interests of this country and our people. And I will continue, Madam Deputy Speaker, to lead negotiations with the Commission. I look forward to the next annual UK-EU summit where this government will continue to build that new strategic partnership. It is what a grown-up, pragmatic relationship looks like. We work together under shared aims for mutually beneficial solutions to our shared problems. That is the approach this government is taking. That is the approach that is delivering results, and I commend this statement to the House.
Call the Shadow Minister, Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We on this side of the House recognise the importance of giving young people educational opportunities, but it is vital that the government benches clearly don't recognise the need for schemes to offer genuine value for money. Now, the UK already had the opportunity to remain a member of Erasmus, but it was precisely because the last government recognised that that scheme did not offer value for money to the taxpayer that we chose not to. And that is why the previous government created the Turing Scheme instead. A global programme for young people in the UK that did not require a one-sided blank cheque to be handed over to Brussels. Now, the Turing Scheme delivered 43,000 placements around the world last year, 23,000 of them to learners from disadvantaged backgrounds at a cost of just over £100 million. So can the Minister confirm that this statement does not in any way undermine the future of the Turing Scheme, that that scheme is guaranteed, or are those opportunities being sacrificed for the smaller number of opportunities available under Erasmus+? Now, the Minister has confirmed that the UK is to pay £570 million as the cost of rejoining Erasmus+. We understand that is being paid for from existing budgets. So can the Minister tell us where is that money coming from? Or is this £570 million being added to the £6 billion send black hole that the OBR identified in the education budget? And does the Minister expect more than the 10,000 students a year from the UK who previously took part in Erasmus Plus to take part in the new scheme, or are we paying £570 million for essentially 10,000 placements a year? Now, the Minister spoke about a fair contribution being a 30% discount. Of course, it's only a matter of weeks since the government was briefing that a fair contribution would be a 50% discount. So it's clearly failed in those negotiations. But can the Minister assure us that whilst he says he's got this discount in the first year, that a discount will be available in subsequent years? And if that hasn't yet, those assurances haven't yet been received, is he prepared to walk away if the EU does not offer us a similar deal in future years? So the opposition has set out clear tests to ensure the government does not roll back on Brexit, including no backsliding on free movement. So can the Minister outline what protections will be put in place to ensure that rejoining Erasmus does not simply mean a return to free movement by the back door for young people? This is particularly important given his complete failure, when asked multiple times, to set out what size of cap he thinks would be appropriate for youth mobility. Now, rejoining Erasmus is just the latest attempt by the government to undo Brexit by stealth. And this fact became, Madam Deputy Speaker, this fact became clear from the very outset of these negotiations, when the government agreed to surrender UK fishing rights for 12 years to the EU, under the pretence that this would, and I quote, pave the way for the UK defence industry to participate in the EU's proposed new defence fund. Yes, 6 months later, this deal has collapsed after the EU's extortionate demands for billions of pounds to join the fund, with no guarantee of any return on the investment in the form of procurement. So can the Minister explain to our hard-working fishing industry why they won't be getting their fish back even after this deal has fallen through? Madam Deputy Speaker, the British people made clear their decision to take back control in 2016, but despite the government's protestations, their approach shows an increasing disregard for this democratic decision.
Thomas Simmons.
If I get this right, I chose not to sign up to participation in safety. It didn't represent value for money, and they're criticising me for that. They're now criticising me for signing up to something that is value for money. So let me just tell him about fish. I'll tell you what's a big advantage to our fishing sector that exports 70% of their catch to the EU, the food and drink agreement that I am going to secure by the time of the next UK-EU summit. That is what will benefit our fishers. And as for his point about the Turing Scheme, I should just say from the dispatch box, first of all, that any person in this academic year currently on the Turing Scheme will continue to be funded. I think it's important that I say that. But I have to tell him, I mean, the honourable gentleman's numbers are absolutely all over the place. And the Erasmus Plus, first of all, the Erasmus Plus scheme has changed significantly since the version that his government walked away from. But not only that, come off it, do you think seriously that that lot could have secured a 30% discount at all? Absolutely not. So, the last year of the Turing Scheme, the one figure the honourable gentleman did get right was that it was 43,200 people. Erasmus is a far bigger scheme. We will be looking for tens of thousands, 100,000 plus young people and others having opportunities from Erasmus. But let me just tell him this as well. It is a lot broader in terms of the opportunities than the Turing Scheme. Because unlike the Turing Scheme is about colleges, it's about schools, universities. Erasmus Plus has wider opportunities around youth work, around sports, around staff being able to have professional exchanges as well. And let me just say, before they start talking about the fact that Turing is all around the world, the fact is that the grant-making bodies for Erasmus Plus in the UK can still allocate 20% of the funding if they want to, if people want to go to other parts of the world as well. So what this is doing is vastly increasing the opportunities, not just for young people, but for adult learners as well. And frankly, if the Conservative position is now to oppose a massive expansion in opportunities for young people, I will welcome that debate at the next election.
Rosie Writing. Deputy Speaker, young people have lost so much. The pandemic kept them in their homes when they should have been in the classroom. Years of austerity under the Tories saw cuts to the services they rely on, and a bad Brexit deal stopped the invaluable chance to study abroad in Europe. Rejoining Erasmus opens up real opportunities for young people to study, train and gain experience abroad. So can the Minister talk more about how this experience can help young people grow in confidence and get them work ready?
Absolutely. My honourable friend is quite right about the wonderful opportunities this presents, not just around self-confidence, but young people I was talking to only this morning at an FE college about how going overseas had helped them to grow as people. But don't just take my word for it. The Association of Colleges says this is brilliant news for further education colleges. Universities UK, fantastic news for the UK. The Russell Group universities, we are delighted, they say, about this reassociation. But who is opposed to this? The Conservative Party.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Dr Al Pinkerton.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister for his statement? We welcome his announcement today. As a recovering academic, which is a distinction I think I share with the Minister, I have witnessed firsthand the impact that the exiting the Erasmus scheme had on university student intake. Welcoming students from across the EU into our education institutions and giving our own students the opportunities to study abroad undeniably has strengthened our education system. So after years of campaigning, the Liberal Democrats welcome the news that the UK is finally set to rejoin the Erasmus scheme from 2027. However, and I'm sure the honourable gentleman expected there to be however, whilst this represents an important first step towards rebuilding a closer relationship with Europe, I urge the Minister to go further and faster. So beyond this fixed-term experience of Erasmus+, will the Government commit to a proper youth mobility scheme for the benefit of the next generation? So can the Minister update the House on what progress has been made in those negotiations? Secondly, can he state how confident that he is that a food, drink and SPS agreement will be agreed by 2026? And how long thereafter will it take to fully implement that scheme? Agri-food and horticultural businesses cannot afford any further delays. And then finally, on the subject of unnecessary barriers to trade, which is where he started his statement, Will his department commit, at the very least, to conducting a transparent assessment of the potential economic growth benefits of a UK-EU customs deal of the kind that this House voted for last week?
Thank you. So on the issue of the youth experience scheme, which I see being in the context of the 13 youth mobility schemes that already exist, many of which signed by the previous government, though they seem to have collective amnesia these days about it. That, together with the linking of our emissions trading systems and the food and drink agreement, we're aiming to conclude negotiations by the next summit. Now, he asked me the direct question about the implementation of the food and drink agreement. I want to see it implemented by the first half of 2027. That will mean a piece of legislation in Parliament in 2026 and getting it through Parliament. I hope, whatever our views may be, that we will have support in doing that as quickly as possible in 2027. Then I want to say more broadly as well about Erasmus Plus just for a moment. And indeed, it applies to the youth experience scheme as well. I want both of them to be open to people of all backgrounds across the United Kingdom. And Erasmus Plus, of course, people often talk about it as a university exchange program, and of course that is a vital part of it, but it isn't just a university exchange programme. It is accessible across the country. I've been looking, for example, at the Welsh Government's Tithe programme, which has done an extremely good job with regard to accessibility, and I think where there are lessons to be learned from that, we will absolutely do it. Where, of course, the Honourable Gentleman and I disagree is on the issue of the customs union, because the government has only in recent days signed an additional free trade agreement with South Korea. We have the economic deal with the United States, the free trade deal with India. All those things would have to be torn up if we went down the path suggested.
Please.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Speaker, and I warmly welcome the announcement that the UK will rejoin Erasmus+. I had the opportunity to live and work in Europe as a young person aged 18, and it is an experience that has continued to benefit me throughout my life. And I can particularly welcome the extension of the scheme beyond study and the government's desire to extend that opportunity to young people from all backgrounds. It is one of the very many detriments of Brexit that young people were denied that opportunity to live and work and study through the Erasmus scheme. In announcing this very welcome development today, can the Minister confirm that he will now also be turning his attention to some of the other detriments that continue to be experienced, particularly by small and medium-sized businesses in my constituency, as a consequence of being unable now to trade in Europe because of barriers resulting from Brexit? And can he confirm work is ongoing in this area and that all options that are in the national interest will remain on the table? My old friend is quite right, and on the first point, there will be now tens of thousands more people, many of them young people, who are going to benefit from the accession to Erasmus+. From what the Shadow Minister is saying, I think seriously they are going to go into the next election opposing people having these additional opportunities. To her second point around reducing trade barriers, 16,000 businesses since Brexit have stopped trading with the EU altogether, and she can be assured that on the food and drink agreement, the work is ongoing to seek to complete those negotiations by the next summit.
Select Committee Chair Simon Hall.
Well, with his white shirt and red tie, the Minister is doing a very good impression of an early visit from Santa. The announcements that he has made this afternoon are, I think, to be warmly welcomed. And he is to be personally congratulated for the good faith and the patience which he has shown with his, in his conversations with Mara Sekovic and others, and it is clearly paying dividends. Would he agree with me that those of us on this side of the House who last week voted against the idiotic proposal from the Liberal Democrats for a customs union have been proved right and then wrong, because the evolution of the relationship within the guardrails of the existing arrangement are the way to go, preserving those new free trade deals and seeing them extend, whilst encouraging businesses to trade with Europe?
Absolutely, and and is always the case with the honourable gentleman. He makes sensible, well-informed contributions to this House. I'm very grateful for his kind words and his personal congratulation, which is deeply appreciated. And he is entirely right. There is a set of guardrails that are this government's democratic mandate, not to rejoin the single market customs union or go back to freedom of movement. We are exercising that independent trade policy, and we've seen that in recent days with the deal with South Korea. And within that framework, the announcement today shows that the negotiations are progressing and delivering tangible results for the British people.
We have less than 45 minutes for this statement, so questions must be short. Uma Kamaran.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his announcement on Erasmus Plus today? It is hugely welcome news in Stratford and Bow for students and my youngest constituents. Before I came to this place, I worked with the Mayor of London calling for an Erasmus scheme. And as a member of the UK-EU Parliamentary Partnership Assembly, we've constantly called for this alongside our European partners. So that students can have the same chances for opportunity that we had, so that they don't suffer the consequences of a Brexit they had no say in. Can the Minister outline the next steps of the UK's participation in this?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and I should say thank you as well for the work that she does in the Parliamentary Partnership Assembly, and indeed broadly the work that is done by that group. Clearly, there now needs to be an appointment of a national agency. I'm sure the House will appreciate that's a commercially sensitive matter, but I certainly hope to be doing that very, very soon to make sure that we have all that we need in place to support those who would like to participate from 2027. There will be great opportunities available. I look forward to doing all I can as a Minister to support people into them.
Barclay.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister's statement didn't seem to say what the contribution to the EU will be. Media reports suggest £570 million, so that it can open borders to have youth workers and others come to the UK at a time of rising unemployment. Could you just confirm what is the amount that will be paid, and that will be more than will be raised from the family farm tax, which the budget said even at the end of this Parliament would only raise up to £500 million a year?
So you would expect the price to be £810 million. With the discount, it is £570 million. However, the honourable gentleman is completely misunderstanding because, of course, substantial amounts of that money come back in the form of grants to our own people who are applying to be on the scheme. But what I've also done, to his point about value for money, is I've also made sure that this argument around a fair balance is embedded. That is the basis we will continue on. But there will be, after 10 months, a review of this on exactly this point to look at that balance between contribution and participation. But if he wants to do something useful in terms of the balance, he could do a lot of work encouraging his own constituents to participate.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank the Minister for this statement. As a proud Erasmus graduate, and as one of the first in my family to go to university, and as a carer for my late mother, I didn't study abroad. I stayed at home and commuted to university, so Erasmus was the first time I was able to experience that. And I think back to now, many years on, I still have connections and friendships formed from that scheme, and now to know that the young people in my constituency will be able to benefit from that is so, so vital. Can the Minister just outline a bit more in terms of the time frame so that we can make sure that this is rolled out not just to those young people in university, but to those apprentices, to those youth workers, to those studying, to make sure they get their life skills and experiences that are so rich and that will stay with them for life?
Minister.
Yeah, my honourable friend speaks very powerfully about the transformative experience that she had, and my aim today is to have, in years to come, others who can speak similarly of the transformative experience that she has had. With regard to moving forward, as I say, firstly, it will be about the appointment of that national agency, but it is then about really important work next year, getting the application process up and running, but making sure that people have that information and are supported to be able to take advantage of the wonderful opportunities that will be coming in 2027.
Lena Moran.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Hallelujah! It feels like some common sense is finally re-entering this debate, and I warmly welcome this, and so do my constituents in Oxford, West and Abingdon, who I remember wrote to me at the time, many of whom literally in tears, because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to participate, and in fact they couldn't. But I do hear what others are saying, trying to poo-poo how much this is worth. It's not just about the money, but there is money to be recouped here too. There will have been an impact assessment. How much is this worth to the UK economy now and going forwards?
Minister.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I can't better the first word that she used as part of that contribution. And of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, as we move forward, we will be making the kind of assessments that the Honourable Lady is talking about. And she's absolutely right to say this will make a significant contribution to our workforce and indeed to our economy. But I will also say as well, because we hear the chuntering from opposite, it isn't only about money. This is also about the way in which young people's lives, and indeed adult learners' lives as well, are going to be enriched in so many ways. This is something we should celebrate across the House.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I congratulate the Minister on doing what I think many of us have felt has been needed in this relationship between the European and the UK, which is what therapists call active listening. And actually listening to our neighbours and what they are interested in and where we can do a deal, and recognising in a relationship that those who keep making random demands, whether it is about a customs union or rejoin or fish, fail to recognise the importance of communication to negotiation. I note that the original wreckers of this relationship have not turned up today to explain to Britain's young people who bore the consequences of their bad behaviour on their future why they felt that was necessary. But he will also know there are many more people in this country and in our constituencies now looking at the work he's doing to repair this relationship and seeking some Christmas cheer. So for all those businesses still facing the piles of paperwork and mountains of red tape, can you play Santa a little bit more and tell us about what 2026 might bring in resetting this relationship and getting Britain back on track with its neighbours?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. I pay warm tribute to the campaigning work that she does on this issue. And in 2026, at that next UK-EU summit, as is agreed, what we will be seeking to do is to complete the negotiations on a food and drink agreement, which would mean less red tape, less cost for businesses, the linkage of our emissions trading system so that we don't have our businesses levied with carbon taxes, and also completing the negotiations on the youth experience scheme to have even more opportunities for our young people. That will be a positive 2026.
Julie Lewis.
May I thank the Minister for the work he did in another capacity on behalf of the victims and the relatives of the victims of the infected blood scandal. He did a very good job, and he reached out to us in a much appreciated non-partisan way. Now, this statement is entitled EU-UK Common Understanding Negotiations. Is it his understanding, as the Minister for EU Relations, that the people with whom he's having dealings are still bent on the creation of a federal United States of Europe? And do I detect some chuntering on the opposite benches to suggest that some people in this House might want to be a part of that?
Minister.
Well, on the second part, I think he's best directing that question to the Commission. But could I just, in relation to the first part of his question, I always, and he knows this, have worked cross-party on infected blood, and I will continue to do so. I think that's very, very important. But also just to say, in relation to working with our European friends and neighbours, whether it is the work the Prime Minister is doing, leading the coalition of the willing, or the work we are even doing, the painstaking work we are doing in recent days on Russian assets, that close relationship, that UK-EU strategic partnership is crucial for our nation's security.
Helena Darley-Moore.
I really welcome the return of Erasmus, and with it the opportunity for young people in Hastings and Rye to study and train in Europe again. As a coastal town, we also want to see the return of our closest link with our European neighbours, bringing back international trains to Ashford International, which this Labour government is supporting. I hear many South East colleagues echoing those calls. So could the Minister, in his discussions with European colleagues, encourage those discussions with Eurostar and urge Virgin Trains, who will be soon running trains on that line, and Sir Richard Branson to stop at Ashford International.
Minister, that was a wide.
I think my honourable friend did manage to create some cross-party consensus then, which is pleasing to see. But look, she makes a very powerful case. I certainly, whether it is with regard to the particular issue around Ashford that she raises, but many other issues of transport as well, my door is always open to these issues, and I'd very much welcome her making those representations formally to me as well.
Stephen Gethins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, it's almost 30 years, I'm afraid to say, since I made the transformative journey from Dundee to Antwerp for my Erasmus experience. Can I thank the Minister because there is some progress in this? Can I ask him a couple of practical questions? One is, obviously there's a different higher education system in Scotland. Scottish universities are very involved in this. How will the financial mechanisms work? Has he worked that out with the Scottish Government and other devolved administrations? And secondly, I want to see all young people have the opportunities that he and I enjoyed. When will we see a return to freedom of movement for our young people entirely?
Minister.
Well, I disappoint you on the last bit because we won't be going back to freedom of movement. But in terms of the question he raised, I was talking to the Scottish Government only first thing this morning, and that same issue was raised. And obviously it doesn't affect the home fees position. And by the way, that is distinct in England, Scotland, and indeed in Wales. So in the university context that he's talking about, some would have their home fees position, but then in a particular year they could, for example, take a gap year and take advantage, hopefully, of the Erasmus Plus opportunity. I'm pleased to hear that Erasmus Plus was transformative for the honourable gentleman in Antwerp, and I hope we will have many more people soon who can say the same.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I commend my right honourable friend for his diligent and detailed work on this. It really is proper grown-up politics, as he said. The return of Erasmus will be widely welcomed in Cambridge, where it's helped many young people in the past and will help an even wider group in the future. But could I just press him on the point about the SPS agreement? I think he confirmed we'll see the back of the wretched export health certificates in 2017. If so, that's a fantastic change. Is that correct?
Minister.
Yes, indeed, and there are fees on businesses today, £200 per consignment on export health certificates, £1,400 if you're selected for sampling, £61 identity checks, all of which can be swept away when the SPS agreement is implemented. And as I indicated in relation to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, the objective is to implement it in the first half of 2027.
The intentions behind the Erasmus scheme are unobjectionable, but 570 million is an awful lot of money. So I'm very pleased that there will be a review after 10 months. Will that review include an assessment of the scheme against what happened in the past, which essentially was to provide a benefit for predominantly middle-class humanities university students? And will he ensure that the opportunity cost to further education, which is tasked with upskilling our young people from a different demographic, are adequately taken into account?
Minister.
Well, first of all, in relation to the further education, and by the way, I do agree with the point that this has to be open to people from all backgrounds. And I do think the Erasmus Plus scheme of today is very different even to how it was 10 years ago. But to give him some reassurance, the Chief Executive of the Association of Colleges that represents our FE sector called this today, and I quote, "brilliant news for staff and students of all ages in further education colleges." I hope that gives him the reassurance that it isn't simply about universities, hugely important though our university sector is. And secondly, to his point about the review is absolutely data-led. We've had this debate before about participation versus contribution. I've always said there has to be a fair balance. That's why I've negotiated the discount in the way that I have. But what that review will do is allow us to move forward on the basis of solid data and numbers of participants, and data-led decision-making is what I'm always in favour of.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As Chair of the UK EU PPA, can I firstly welcome today's statement and also commend my honourable friend for the stellar job that he is doing, showing that this Labour government is making
very good progress on rebuilding our relationships with the EU. Rejoining Erasmus Plus is a big win for young people in Battersea and across the country, creating opportunities to study, to train, to develop new skills, achieve success, and more importantly, thrive. So can the Minister just outline just a bit more about how young people will be able to access the Erasmus Plus scheme?
Briefly outline, Minister.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for the work that she does co-chairing the PPA. In 2026, it's critical that we have both the national agency, but also then the simplest process that we possibly can have for people to be able to access a very wide range of benefits. I hope that's short enough, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Carmichael.
Speaker, it's great to see the Paymaster General at the dispatch box, as always. It would be even better if we could see him at the EFRA Select Committee, who are taking a close interest in the Food and Drink Agreement. Can I remind him that Boris Johnson got it badly wrong with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement because he allowed the political imperative of getting a deal to trump the detail of that deal, and that was because he didn't listen to the fishermen, the farmers and the other food producers. Will he keep them close as he negotiates it, and will he come to talk to the Select Committee? We really won't bite him, I promise.
Minister.
I'll hold him to that promise, Madam Deputy Speaker. But in relation to working with the sectors, he's absolutely right. And as we move forward, firstly to complete the negotiations for detailed legal text on the SPS agreement, but also as we move into the implementation phase, everyone understands we are reducing barriers, we are cutting red tape, we are making trade easier, but absolutely we have to work with whether it's our fishers, our farmers, but all the agri-food sector as well to make that as smooth as possible.
Ruth Cadbury.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The return to UK's involvement in Erasmus is hugely welcome, not only for my constituents who are at university, but also those working or learning in schools, FE colleges and working in the sports and youth sectors. So could my right honourable friend please outline what steps the government is going to be taking, particularly to those based in those sectors not previously involved, so that they can expect to and plan for involvement in Erasmus from 2027?
No, my honourable friend raises a really important point. And, for example, this morning, the first place I wanted to visit was a further education college, the New City College in Hackney. So I'm really keen that the FE sector gets the full benefit, but she's absolutely right. Proactively reaching out, whether it's the youth sector, whether it's in terms of adult learners, whether it's in terms of staff and professional training, that's going to be really important because people can then understand the opportunities that are there if they want to take advantage of them.
I only have 20 minutes remaining, so colleagues must keep their questions short and the answers just as short. Dame Harriet Bolwin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister just